The security camera footage didn't lie. At 9:47 p.m. on a cold November evening, outside Romano's Italian restaurant in downtown Charleston, 24-year-old Marcus Trump shoved 72-year-old Vietnam veteran William Patterson against a brick wall with such force that the elderly man's head cracked against the surface, leaving him unconscious on the wet pavement. The crime was brutal. The arrogance was worse. Marcus Trump, son of Police Chief Jonathan Trump, one of the most powerful men in Charleston, had been asked by Mr. Patterson to move his luxury sports car, which was blocking the restaurant's handicapped access ramp. The decorated veteran, who walked with a cane due to injuries sustained in combat, had politely requested the young man follow the law. Marcus's response? "Do you know who my father is, old man? I park wherever I want." When Mr. Patterson attempted to photograph the vehicle's license plate to report it, Marcus exploded. Witnesses watched in horror as he grabbed the elderly veteran's phone, threw it into the street, and then physically assaulted him. 3 bystanders immediately called 911. 2 others rushed to help Mr. Patterson, who lay bleeding from a head wound, his service medal pin scattered on the ground beside him. The paramedics arrived within minutes. Mr. Patterson was rushed to Charleston Memorial Hospital with a severe concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured wrist from trying to break his fall. The community erupted. William Patterson wasn't just any elderly man. He was a Bronze Star recipient, a retired teacher who had volunteered at the local Boys and Girls Club for 20 years, and a beloved grandfather of 6. His photograph, taken at the Veterans Day ceremony just weeks earlier, appeared on every news station and social media platform within hours. The video went viral. #Justice for Patterson trended nationally. Protesters gathered outside the police station, demanding that Marcus Trump face the full weight of the law despite his father's position. Veterans organizations issued statements. The mayor held a press conference promising transparency and justice. Through it all, Marcus Trump remained silent, protected behind his father's lawyers and the walls of his family's mansion. The arraignment was set for 2 weeks later. The charge, aggravated assault on an elderly person, which carried a potential sentence of 5 to 15 years in prison. But an unexpected revelation was about to change everything in the courtroom. Judge Catherine Reynolds had presided over Charleston's Superior Court for 28 years. She had seen every kind of criminal, heard every excuse, and witnessed every manipulation tactic imaginable. At 62, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, she commanded respect the moment she entered a courtroom. This morning, Courtroom 4 was packed beyond capacity. Reporters lined the back wall, their cameras aimed at the defense table. Veterans in uniform sat shoulder to shoulder in the gallery, their faces stern and watchful. Community members who couldn't find seats stood in the hallway, hoping to catch a glimpse through the doorway. The air was thick with tension and the weight of expectation. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Catherine Reynolds," the bailiff announced. The room stood as one. Judge Reynolds took her seat, surveyed the courtroom with practiced calm, and opened the file before her. "You may be seated," she said, her voice firm but measured. "We are here for the case of the state versus Marcus Trump. Will the defendant please rise?" Marcus Trump stood slowly, almost lazily. He wore an expensive tailored suit that probably cost more than most people in that courtroom earned in a month. His dark hair was perfectly styled. His face showed no remorse, only barely concealed irritation at having to be there at all. His attorney, Gerald Mitchell, a slick defense lawyer known for getting wealthy clients reduced sentences, stood beside him with practiced confidence. "Mr. Trump," Judge Reynolds began, looking directly at the defendant, "you are charged with aggravated assault on an elderly person. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Mitchell answered before Marcus could speak. Judge Reynolds's eyes narrowed slightly. "I asked your client, Mr. Mitchell." Marcus shrugged, actually shrugged, in a courtroom. "Not guilty. Obviously." A murmur rippled through the gallery. Judge Reynolds's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. "Mr. Trump, You will address this court with respect, or you will be held in contempt." "Is that clear?" "Crystal," Marcus replied with a smirk that made several veterans in the audience shift forward in their seats. The prosecutor, District Attorney Lisa Morrison, was a skilled lawyer with a reputation for thorough preparation and passionate advocacy for victims. She stood, her expression serious. "Your Honor, if I may, we have overwhelming evidence in this case. Security footage, multiple eyewitnesses, medical records documenting Mr. Patterson's severe injuries, and the defendant's own words captured on video showing complete disregard for the law and the victim." "The alleged victim," Mitchell interrupted smoothly, "who initiated the confrontation by harassing my client about where he chose to park his vehicle." "Harassing?" Morrison's voice rose with controlled anger. "Mr. Patterson politely asked the defendant to move his car from a handicapped spot, which, I should note, Mr. Trump had no permit to use, and was brutally assaulted for exercising basic civic responsibility." Judge Reynolds raised her hand for silence. "We will hear testimony and evidence before making conclusions. Is the victim present?" "Yes, Your Honor." William Patterson rose slowly from his seat in the front row. Even 2 weeks later, the bruising on his face was still visible. He walked to the witness stand with his cane, moving carefully due to his healing ribs. The Purple Heart pin on his jacket caught the courtroom lights. After being sworn in, Mr. Patterson sat down, his weathered hands folded calmly despite the obvious pain he was in. "Mr. Patterson," Morrison began gently, "can you tell the court what happened on the evening of November 14th? The elderly veteran spoke clearly and with dignity. "I had just finished dinner with my wife at Romano's, celebrating our 50th wedding anniversary. As we were leaving, I noticed a red sports car parked in the handicapped spot right by the ramp, the spot I needed to use because of my leg injury from the war. There was no handicapped permit displayed." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I saw a young man getting out of the car, so I approached him politely and explained the situation. I asked if he might move his vehicle so that I could access the ramp." "And how did the defendant respond?" Mr. Patterson's voice remained steady, but sadness crept into his eyes. "He told me, and I quote, 'Do you know who my father is, old man? I park wherever I want.' When I attempted to take a photograph of his license plate to report it to the police, he became violent." "Can you describe what happened next?" "He grabbed my phone and threw it into the street. When I tried to retrieve it, he shoved me backward with both hands. I hit the wall behind me, and then I don't remember anything until I woke up in the hospital." The courtroom was silent. Several people wiped their eyes. Marcus Trump leaned back in his chair, examining his fingernails with apparent boredom. Judge Reynolds's gaze fixed on him like a laser. "Mr. Trump, are you finding these proceedings tedious?" Marcus looked up, that same arrogant smirk playing on his lips. "Your Honor, with all due respect, this is being blown completely out of proportion. The man got in my face, and I defended myself. If he's too fragile to handle a little push, maybe he shouldn't be confronting people half his age." The courtroom exploded. "Order!" Judge Reynolds's gavel cracked like thunder. "Order in this court!" Veterans were on their feet, shouting. Reporters frantically typed. Mr. Patterson sat motionless, his dignity intact despite the cruel words. Judge Reynolds's face was stone. "Mr. Trump, you will sit down and remain silent, or I will have you removed from this courtroom in handcuffs. Your attorney will speak for you from this point forward." "Do I make myself absolutely clear?" For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Marcus's face. But it vanished quickly, replaced by that same entitled confidence. He sat down with exaggerated compliance. Mitchell placed a hand on his client's arm in warning. Judge Reynolds took a breath, visibly controlling her anger. "This court will take a 15-minute recess. When we return, I expect professional behavior from all parties, or there will be serious consequences." She stood, and the bailiff called for all to rise. As the judge exited to her chambers, the courtroom buzzed with outrage and anticipation. Mr. Patterson was helped back to his seat by his family. Marcus Trump laughed quietly with his attorney, clearly unconcerned. But in the back corner of the courtroom, barely visible among the crowd of spectators, a tall man in a police chief's uniform sat completely still. His face was unreadable, but his hands gripped the bench in front of him so tightly his knuckles had turned white. He had heard every word his son had said. The recess ended. Judge Reynolds returned, her expression now completely neutral, which anyone who knew her recognized as a dangerous sign. "Before we continue," she said slowly, "I would like to address something. It has been brought to my attention that Police Chief Jonathan Trump is present in this courtroom today." Every head turned toward the back. Marcus's smug expression finally cracked, replaced by shock. "Chief Trump," Judge Reynolds continued, her voice carrying easily through the silent room, "would you please approach the bench?" And then someone stood up in the back of the courtroom. Jonathan Trump rose slowly from his seat. At 56 years old, the police chief was an imposing figure, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and the same sharp features as his son. But where Marcus's face showed arrogance, Jonathan's showed something far more complex: shame, exhaustion, and a deep, bone-deep disappointment. He had been Charleston's police chief for 12 years, earning respect through fair leadership, community engagement, and an unwavering commitment to justice. He had built his reputation on integrity. And now his son was destroying it in front of the entire city. The crowd parted as he walked down the center aisle. His uniform was immaculate, his posture military straight, but those who looked closely could see the strain in his face, the evidence of sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Marcus's face had gone pale. "Dad?" he whispered. Jonathan didn't look at his son. He kept his eyes forward as he approached the bench. "Chief Trump," Judge Reynolds said, her tone formal but not unkind, "thank you for coming forward. I understand this is an extraordinarily difficult situation." "Your Honor." Jonathan's voice was rough with emotion. "Permission to address the court?" "Granted." Jonathan turned to face the gallery. For a long moment he simply stood there, gathering himself. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard truth. "I came here today not as police chief, but as a father." He paused. "A father who has failed." The courtroom was absolutely silent. "I have spent my entire career upholding the law. I have arrested people I grew up with. I have made difficult decisions that cost me friendships. I have always believed that the law applies equally to everyone, regardless of wealth, status, or family connections." He drew a breath. "But somehow, in raising my son, I failed to teach him that fundamental principle. I gave him too much. I protected him from consequences. I made excuses when he got into trouble. I told myself he would grow out of it, that he just needed time to mature." Jonathan's voice broke slightly. "I was wrong, and Mr. Patterson paid the price for my failure as a father." He turned toward William Patterson. "Sir, I cannot express how deeply sorry I am. You served this country with honor and courage. You have lived a life of dignity and service. And my son attacked you for simply asking him to follow the law. There are no words adequate to express my shame." Mr. Patterson nodded slightly, his eyes glistening. Jonathan turned back to Judge Reynolds. "Your Honor, I know that my position in this city might create the appearance of impropriety or favoritism. I want to state clearly, for the record and before all these witnesses, that I am not here to protect my son from the consequences of his actions." Marcus half stood. "Dad, sit down." The command was thunderous, and Marcus dropped back into his chair as if struck. Jonathan's face was hard now, the face of a police officer confronting a criminal. I am here to ensure that justice is served. My son committed a serious crime. The evidence is overwhelming. He has shown no remorse. In fact, he just demonstrated in this courtroom that he still believes himself above the law and above basic human decency. He straightened his shoulders. Your Honor, as a citizen of this city and the father of the defendant, I am requesting that you apply the full weight of the law in this case. No special treatment. No reduced charges because of who I am. My son needs to learn what I failed to teach him. That actions have consequences, that power comes with responsibility, and that every human being, regardless of age or status, deserves respect and dignity. The courtroom erupted in stunned murmurs. Mitchell looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Morrison's eyes widened in surprise. And Marcus looked like his entire world was collapsing. "Dad, please." His voice was small now, the arrogance gone. "I didn't mean. I was just—" "You were just what, Marcus?" Jonathan finally turned to face his son, and the pain in his eyes was palpable. "Just being yourself? Just doing what you've always done, expecting me to clean up your messes? Just treating another human being like they're beneath you?" Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. "I'm sorry. Dad, I'm so sorry." "Are you?" Jonathan's voice was softer but no less firm. "Are you sorry for what you did, or are you sorry that you finally have to face real consequences?" Marcus opened his mouth but couldn't speak. The question hung in the air, unanswered. Jonathan turned back to Judge Reynolds. "Your Honor, my son has never truly faced accountability for his actions. I enabled that. It ends today. Whatever sentence you deem appropriate, I will support it fully. Additionally, regardless of the legal consequences, Marcus will no longer have access to the family finances that have allowed him to live consequence-free. He will no longer have my protection or influence. He will stand on his own and face what he has done." "Chief Trump," Judge Reynolds said quietly, "I recognize the courage it takes to do what you're doing." "No, Your Honor." Jonathan shook his head. "Courage is what Mr. Patterson showed in Vietnam. Courage is what he showed in standing up to my son despite knowing it might cost him. What I'm doing is simply what should have been done years ago. It's not courage, it's penance." He looked one more time at Marcus, whose face was buried in his hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. "I love my son," Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will always love him. But love doesn't mean protecting someone from the truth. Real love means helping them become better, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts." Judge Reynolds nodded slowly. "Thank you, Chief Trump. You may return to your seat." As Jonathan walked back down the aisle, the courtroom remained in stunned silence. Veterans who had come prepared for battle now sat with complicated expressions, anger at the crime, but respect for the father's painful honesty. Judge Reynolds looked at Marcus Trump, who was now sobbing openly at the defense table, his attorney unsure what to do. "Mr. Trump," the judge said, "do you have anything you wish to say to this court before I deliver my ruling?" Marcus looked up, his face red and tear-streaked, all arrogance finally stripped away. His voice cracked. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. Mr. Patterson, I'm sorry doesn't even come close to being enough. I hurt you. I humiliated you. I treated you like you were nothing when you're everything I'm not. You have honor. You have dignity. And I'm just a spoiled coward who's been hiding behind my father's name my whole life." He stood, his legs shaking. "Your Honor, whatever you decide, I deserve it. I deserve worse than whatever you give me. And Mr. Patterson." He turned to face the elderly veteran. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to become someone worthy of your forgiveness, even though I know I may never earn it." For the first time since the trial began, his words sounded genuine. Judge Reynolds sat back in her chair, regarding the broken young man before her. The courtroom waited. Judge Catherine Reynolds had spent nearly 3 decades on the bench, and in that time she had learned to recognize genuine transformation from manipulative performance. What she saw in Marcus Trump's face was raw, painful awakening, the moment when a young man finally understood the weight of his own actions. But understanding alone didn't erase the crime. "Mr. Trump," she began, her voice measured and grave, "you have committed a serious violent crime against a vulnerable member of our community. You assaulted a 72-year-old decorated combat veteran because he had the audacity to ask you to follow the law. You showed complete disregard for his safety, his dignity, and his humanity." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Your behavior in this courtroom initially demonstrated that you believed yourself above accountability. However, your father's courage and your own eventual recognition of your actions have shown me that you may be capable of change." Judge Reynolds leaned forward. "But the court's responsibility is not just to you, Mr. Trump. It is to Mr. Patterson, who will live with the physical and emotional scars of your assault for the rest of his life. It is to this community, which must believe that justice is truly blind. And it is to society as a whole, which must know that wealth and connections do not place anyone above the law." She opened the sentencing file. "Therefore, I am sentencing you as follows. First, you will serve 5 years in the South Carolina Department of Corrections, with eligibility for parole after 3 years, contingent on demonstrable rehabilitation and completion of all court-ordered programs. Second, you will complete 2,000 hours of community service at veterans organizations and senior care facilities upon your release. Third, you will pay full restitution for all of Mr. Patterson's medical expenses, pain and suffering, and any future medical needs related to this assault. Fourth, you will be required to complete anger management counseling, classes on respect and civic responsibility, and will speak at schools and community organizations about the consequences of entitlement and violence." Marcus stood motionless, tears still falling, but he nodded acceptance. "However," Judge Reynolds continued, "I want to be clear, this is not just punishment. This is an opportunity for transformation. You are 24 years old. You have the chance to become a better man. Whether you take that chance is entirely up to you." She looked at him directly. "Do you understand the sentence?" "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus's voice was steady now, matured by the gravity of the moment. "Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve." Judge Reynolds nodded. Then she turned her attention to Jonathan Trump. "Chief Trump, would you like to add anything?" Jonathan stood again, his bearing still dignified despite the emotional toll visible in his face. "Yes, Your Honor. In addition to the court sentence, I want to state publicly that Marcus is no longer financially supported by his mother or myself. When he is released, he will need to find his own employment, his own housing, and build his own life without the safety net that allowed him to act with such reckless entitlement." He looked at his son. "This is not abandonment, Marcus. This is liberation. For the first time in your life, you'll have to earn everything you have. You'll learn what real people face every day. And maybe you'll finally understand what it means to have dignity through your own efforts, not through your family's name." Marcus nodded, more tears falling. "I understand, Dad. And thank you. I mean it." Judge Reynolds then turned to the man who had been the center of this entire case but had remained remarkably quiet throughout the sentencing. "Mr. Patterson, the court recognizes you as the victim in this case. Would you like to address the defendant or the court?" William Patterson rose slowly, supported by his cane. At 72, with visible bruises still marking his face and moving carefully due to healing ribs, he was a living testament to both the fragility and the strength of the human spirit. He looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had faced real adversity and emerged with grace intact. Young man, what you did to me hurt. Not just physically, though these old bones don't heal like they used to." He smiled sadly. "You hurt my faith in young people. You hurt my belief that we're teaching the next generation about respect and responsibility." Marcus's face crumbled, but Mr. Patterson wasn't finished. "But I've been watching you today. I've seen something I didn't see that night outside the restaurant. I've seen you finally wake up to who you've been." He paused. "Your father is a good man. I've known Chief Trump for years, and he's always been fair and just. Today he showed more courage than most people show in a lifetime. He gave you something rare, truth, even when it hurt." The elderly veteran stepped closer, leaning on his cane. "So here's what I want to say to you. I forgive you." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. "I don't forget what you did. I can't. These scars won't let me. But I forgive you because I believe in second chances. I believe people can change. And because holding on to anger would only hurt me more than you already have." Mr. Patterson's eyes, weathered but kind, locked onto Marcus's. "Use this time wisely, son. Learn what honor really means. Learn that respect isn't taken, it's earned. Learn that real strength isn't dominating others, it's lifting them up. And when you get out, prove to yourself, your father, and this community that you're worth the second chance we're giving you." He extended his hand. Marcus stared at it for a moment, overwhelmed. Then he stepped forward and shook it gently, mindful of the older man's injuries. "Thank you, sir," Marcus whispered. "I won't waste this." "See that you don't," Mr. Patterson replied with a small nod. As Mr. Patterson returned to his seat, there wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even some of the reporters were discreetly wiping their faces. Judge Reynolds allowed the moment to settle before speaking again. "This court is adjourned. Mr. Trump, the bailiff will take you into custody immediately to begin your sentence. May you use this time to become the man your father hoped you would be." The gavel struck with finality. Two bailiffs approached Marcus, who didn't resist. As they led him away, he looked back one more time at his father. Jonathan Trump stood at attention, his hand raised in a salute, not to the son Marcus had been, but to the man he hoped Marcus would become. Marcus returned the gesture awkwardly, tearfully, before disappearing through the door that led to the county jail. Epilogue. 8 months later. The Charleston Veterans Center was bustling with activity on a warm Saturday morning. Volunteers were setting up tables for the monthly community breakfast, where veterans and their families gathered for free meals and fellowship. Among the volunteers was a young man in his mid-20s, wearing jeans and a simple gray T-shirt. He moved tables with practiced efficiency, greeted elderly veterans with genuine warmth, and listened intently to their stories with interest that showed in his eyes. "Marcus, can you help Mr. Johnson with his wheelchair?" called out the center's director, Sandra Mills. "On it, Ms. Mills," the young man replied, jogging over to assist an elderly Korean War veteran navigate the entrance ramp. "Thank you, son," Mr. Johnson said as Marcus carefully guided him inside. "You're here every weekend, aren't you?" "Yes, sir. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else." It was true. Marcus Trump, inmate number 45782 at the South Carolina Department of Corrections during the week, spent every weekend on work release at various veterans' facilities and senior centers. After 8 months of incarceration, the arrogant young man who had assaulted William Patterson had been replaced by someone genuinely humbled by experience. Prison had been exactly as difficult as everyone had warned him. Without his father's protection or family money, Marcus was just another inmate. He'd been challenged, threatened, and forced to learn how to navigate a world where his last name meant nothing and his previous attitude earned him enemies. He'd also been forced to listen, truly listen, to the men he served alongside. Many were there for violence born of desperation, addiction, or circumstances Marcus had never had to face. Their stories opened his eyes to a world he'd been privileged enough to ignore his entire life. The anger management classes had been uncomfortable, forcing him to confront the entitlement and rage that had driven him to attack an elderly man over a parking space. The civic responsibility courses had taught him about the community he'd once moved through like it existed solely for his convenience. But the real transformation had come from a letter he'd received 3 months into his sentence. It was from William Patterson. Dear Marcus, I'm writing to you not because you deserve my words, but because I remember what it was like to be young and lost. I wasn't always the man I am now. The war changed me, showed me what really matters. I don't know if you're using this time to change or just counting down days. But I hope it's the former. I hope you're reading, thinking, and growing. I hope you're learning that the world is bigger than your wants and that every person you meet carries their own story, their own struggles, their own dignity. Your father visits me sometimes. We have coffee and talk. He's a good man carrying a heavy burden, loving you while having to watch you face consequences he can't shield you from. That takes a strength most people don't understand. When you get out, come see me. Not to apologize again. You did that in court. Come so I can see who you've become. Respectfully, William Patterson. Marcus had read that letter so many times the paper had become soft at the creases. It sat in his cell, a reminder that redemption was possible but had to be earned through changed actions, not just promised words. Now, serving breakfast to veterans like Mr. Patterson, Marcus was taking the first real steps of that journey. Marcus! A familiar voice called from across the room. He turned to see Police Chief Jonathan Trump entering the community center, accompanied by someone Marcus hadn't seen in months. William Patterson himself, walking with his cane but moving better than he had at the trial. Marcus's heart raced. They'd corresponded by letter, but this was the first time seeing Mr. Patterson since that day in court. He walked over slowly, suddenly nervous. Mr. Patterson. Dad. Hello, son, Jonathan said quietly, pride and caution mixed in his expression. William Patterson studied Marcus for a moment, taking in the changes, the humility in his posture, the genuine care in how he'd been interacting with the veterans, the absence of that arrogant mask. Sandra tells me you're here every weekend, Mr. Patterson said. That you're one of her most reliable volunteers. I try to be, sir. These men, they have so much to teach. So many stories. Marcus's voice was sincere. I was so ignorant before. I'm still learning, but I'm trying. Mr. Patterson nodded slowly. Trying is what matters. Perfection isn't the goal. Growth is. He paused. Your father and I have been talking. We have a proposition for you. Marcus looked between them, confused. Jonathan stepped forward. When you're released on parole in a few months, you're going to need a job. Mr. Patterson and I have been working with the veterans community and the City Council on a new program, a youth outreach initiative to teach respect, civic responsibility, and service. We want you to help run it. Marcus's eyes widened. What? Why would you? Because transformation is wasted if it's not shared, Mr. Patterson said simply. You've lived both sides, the arrogance and the awakening. Young people need to hear from someone who's been there, someone who can say, this is what entitlement cost me, and this is what humility gave me. But who would listen to me? Who would trust me after what I did? That's exactly the point, Jonathan said. You're not coming as someone perfect. You're coming as someone who failed, faced consequences, and chose to be better. That's a more powerful lesson than any lecture from someone who's never stumbled. Marcus felt tears welling up. I don't know if I'm ready. You're not, Mr. Patterson said bluntly. And that's okay. You'll keep learning while you teach. We all do. He extended his hand again, just as he had in the courtroom. What do you say? Marcus looked at the hand, scarred from war, bruised from Marcus's own violence, now offered again in fellowship and trust. He shook it firmly. "I say thank you, and I promise I'll earn this chance." "See that you do," Mr. Patterson replied with a slight smile. As the three men stood together in the community center, the veteran, the police chief, and the reformed offender, the future was uncertain but full of possibility. Marcus Trump still had years of work ahead of him to truly make amends, to build a life of meaning rather than entitlement. But for the first time in his 24 years, he was on the right path. And sometimes, that's where real honor begins.